Page number 58 continued. Number 2. Moral artistry. Shakespeare said Johnson is so much more careful to please than to instruct that he seems to write without any moral purpose. Lest this should appear too downright, Johnson also added, "From his writings, indeed, a system of social duty may be selected, for he that thinks reasonably must think morally." This only means that reason and experience, not dogma and theory, governed Shakespeare's plotting and characterization. He was writing drama, not campaigning to make the world better. He was not interested in proving a case nor in projecting a formal philosophy. His plays have thus no detachable morality, though they do have a circumambient moral atmosphere. Shakespeare did not tell his audience what they should do, but presented a certain recognizable human situation in which, as it were with the connivance of the audience, certain things were being done. He was a practical dramatist, writing for the great variety of common theatre-goers, and both dramatist and audience hankered after, unearthly crown, and well understood the limits of the practicable and the permissible. Life was hard. The bludgeonings, bludgeonings, bludgeonings of chance and ironic circumstances were numberless, but happiness too was realizable on earth, and was indeed often realized by the fortunately and wisely endowed men. There was thus a moral prudence about the plays that clearly stemmed alike from the moral health and moral artistry of the dramatist himself. Number 3. Vivid portraiture. Characterization. There are many ways of studying the plays, all of which may be related to the dramatic art, and a brief reference may be made to them here. Vivid characterization is a vital feature of Shakespeare, and it is achieved, among others, by affording scope for comparative and contrasting studies. End of page 58. Now page 59. Prince Hamlet and Laertes, King Lear and Gloucester, Brutus and Cassius are pairs which may be studied in contrast. For this purpose, Shakespeare combines 2 or 3 stories in one play. Such a combination intensifies the tragic atmosphere of King Lear. To fulfill the ambitious aim of holding up the mirror to nature, Shakespeare's work comprehends a variety of human beings from different walks of life. This implies his knowledge of different professions. It is pointed out that the first scene in The Tempest reveals the accurate knowledge of steering a ship in a storm. Scattered over the plays is the knowledge of the law and legal terms. He presented a unique trial scene in The Merchant of Venice. In the gravedigger scene, Prince Hamlet reflects on a skull, a lawyer's, as he thinks, which he holds in his hands, where be his guillotines now, his quillets, his cases, his tenures, and his tricks. To fulfill the ambitious aim of holding up the mirror to nature, Shakespeare's work comprehends a variety of human beings from different walks of life. This implies his knowledge of different professions. It is pointed out that the first scene in The Tempest reveals the accurate knowledge of steering a ship in a storm. Scattered over the plays is the knowledge of the law and legal terms. He presented a unique trial scene in The Merchant of Venice. In the gravedigger scene, Prince Hamlet reflects on a skull, a lawyer's as he thinks, which he holds in his hands, Where be his quiddities now, his quillets, his cases, his tenures, and his tricks? The characters in the plays fall roughly into three groups. First, there are many men and women who are far removed from the lives of ordinary people: the kings, queens, and princesses, the great general, the bold rebels and unconquerable heroes. All these are clothed with full dramatic significance even before we meet them. The drama in the crown and scepter, excitement in the very presence of the man whose birth or brilliance has raised him above his fellows. Such characters as King Lear, Antony, Othello, Hamlet, Richard II, Macbeth, and Lady Macbeth start with this great advantage. But Shakespeare was too skillful a playwright to leave them in isolation. The whole purpose of the plays in which these characters appear is to show their common humanity. The man hidden behind the intertissued robe of gold and pearl must be revealed, and in the splendid realism of the revelation in each case lies much of Shakespeare's greatness as an artist. It is not until all the outward signs of royalty have been stripped away that we see Lear only as a very foolish, fond old man, but nonetheless a great and tragic figure. It is as men and not as princes of great soldiers that we see the other great tragic characters. Like Othello, mad with jealousy, Macbeth is in restless agony upon the torture of his mind, and Hamlet, the very symbol of youth's bitter disillusionment. These and others are on a plane above the normal way of life, and here we shall find others too, the desperate men and women, some of them kings like Richard III or Claudius of Denmark, people also of high but warped intelligence like Iago, Edmund, and Lady Macbeth. These also in the vivid completeness of their criminality are both outside the normal course of experience, and yet familiar or made so by Shakespeare's all-embracing understanding of the portrayal of men and women. Secondly, there is the smaller world of heathen gods, witches, magicians, fairies, monsters, ghosts, which have a special prominence in A Midsummer Night's Dream, Hamlet, Macbeth, Cymbeline, and Tempest. They are linked to the other order of kings and queens by virtue of the fact that they are far removed from the ordinary experiences of daily life. They have an even greater dramatic advantage than high rank. They emerge to excite our interest from the strange twilight world of the supernatural. Who after one meeting can ever forget the mischievous personality of Puck or his fairy master Oberon? From the same lands comes Ariel, and here too can be found the half-human monster Caliban, and whom all the ugliness and simplicity of primitive man are centered. Here also may be found the evil witches who haunt the mind of Macbeth, and into its darkness, upon the crowing of the cock, banish the sad ghosts that visit Brutus, Hamlet, and Macbeth. These are all a part of the richness of Shakespeare's creation, and they are all convincing in their representation of an aspect of life which Shakespeare was too wise to deny. Thirdly, there are the ordinary people of all types, a world of citizens and their wives, of young lovers who are only concerned with the wealth of their own passion for one another, a world of merchants and grave diggers, country squires and justices of the peace, old soldiers and old rascals, serving men and holy men. There is no end to the variety of human types depicted in the plays of Shakespeare, no suggestion that as a dramatist he was ill at ease in any company he chose to frequent. As we read, we gradually become aware that the age of Elizabeth and the ages of the past are taking on a vivid life before our eyes, courtiers exchanging their light-hearted jests, fleet the time carelessly as they did in the golden world. End of page 59. Now page number 60. Falstaff, Falstaff, Falstaff rolls in with his page at his heels, and the laughter of all time is heard. Tired soldiers wait for dawn and death on the cold, damp fields of Agincourt. Battles are lost and won. The feudal age, in all its cruelty and pageantry, lies before us. Or elsewhere, we are carried away into the distant Roman past to see grave senators face the angry mobs. This is the universality of great literature. It is with men and women of all countries and of all times that Shakespeare was concerned, with their laughter and their tears, and rarely indeed did he fail to give a vivid, convincing life to these people. That is one secret of his greatness, his wide, all-embracing sympathy, and with that, his ability to enter fully into the very souls of all his characters and to bring them before us, no matter what their station in life, as real people. There is no place in the world of Shakespeare for cardboard figures, for the purposes with which so many dramatists have been content. Instead, he presents us with living men and women whose vivid reality haunts our days and nights, with people whose problems are those we know so well, whose mistakes are those we might so easily have made ourselves. Hamlet is not only the individual, the Prince of Denmark of the play, but the eternal spirit of youth, face to face with doubt, despair and misery. Falstaff is not only the jesting companion of Prince Hal, but also the living symbol of human comedy. Bates, Court and Williams fought not only at Agincourt, but at Arnhem also. Although primarily all these characters have the unmistakable mark of the Elizabethan age, they are of all races and all countries. It is this which further helps to explain the appeal which the plays have for the peoples of the world. There are plays which deal with England and English life, chiefly those based on Holinshed's Chronicle, but including also The Merry Wives of Windsor, where the scene is the contemporary England, and Cymbeline and King Lear, based on the history of the earliest British kings. Macbeth carries us back to medieval Scotland, and Hamlet has Denmark as a background. France is the setting for love's labor lost and all's well that ends well. Vienna is represented by Measure for Measure, Venice and Cyprus by Othello, Egypt by Antony and Cleopatra, Troy by Troilus and Cressida, and Athens by Midsummer Night's Dream. Apart from England itself, Italy and Italian literature were the chief inspiration of the plays. Plutarch's liver as Plutarch's Lives as translated by Sir Thomas North, and the stories of Boccaccio, Bandello, Aristo and Stroparola is as translated in Painter's Palace of Pleasure sets the poet's imagination on fire. Yet there is little enough realism in Shakespeare's treatment of places, with carefree disregard of the fact he gives a seacoast to the island country of Bohemia and clocks on to the citizens of Rome. The background of As You Like It is a charming but quite unreal blending of the Warwickshire countryside. The forest forest of Arden is a jungle inhabited by snakes and lions, while the Illyria of the 12th Night is indeed a country of the mind. It is with Shakespeare, it is with people rather than with the places that Shakespeare is imaginatively concerned. For him, time and place are of less importance than human personality. Good and evil in Shakespeare. Shakespearean drama has many shapes and forms. There is, however, nothing so touching, so absorbing, so much charged with inner delight and satisfaction for a certain type of reader as the way Shakespeare treats good and evil in his more serious plays. The poet does not explain, does not rationalize, he merely portrays and reveals. When we look into the depth of this cosmos, the firmament overhead, and the galaxies in the infinite distance, do we understand and ratiocinate? We do not. Rather does the throb and twinkle of the stellar blue strike a similar throb and twinkle in our spirit. We do not rationalize a creator or a primeval patriarch. We dimly feel him. The conflict of good and evil, their death grip in Shakespeare leaves us aghast. What is attempted here is not merely showing the juxtaposition of good and evil, their having been born as twins, the coiling of evil round the good of man's life in the way in which in Laocoon the snakes coiled round the shapely figures of the priest's two sons, but the recognition that evil is as strong as good, that the conflict between the two is a conflict between equals, fate and gloom and mystery, sometimes a glimmer of hope and sometimes a dark despair enter into the arena. There is an uproar and a clash of weapons which emanate from the infinite distances. But the fight remains a fight between evil and good, between two foemen equal in their omnipotence. Satan is ultimately worsted and humbled in paradise. End of page 60, now page 61. Satan is ultimately worsted and humbled in paradise lost. But evil in life of man on this earth, and so in Shakespeare, blazes on its path and trails in clouds of a kind of glory, even as good, with his faith and fortitude, invincible indeed, but tired and becalmed, merges into the infinite substance. We certainly admire the sustaining power of good, but we also admire the destructive power of evil. The shield is enough power to bear the stroke of the sword, but not a jot stronger. Number 5. Poetry and philosophy. Poetry and philosophy are never far apart, and the truly great poet does not merely depict. He also interprets life for us by simplifying its problems, by giving its seemingly diverse and contradictory elements their proper place in a larger and fuller pattern of existence. Like all other works of art, the plays of Shakespeare reveal an attitude to the life rather than a properly worked out system of philosophy. It is possible, however, to trace certain beliefs in the great mass of incident and character which the plays depict. They are particularly. Number 5. Poetry and philosophy. Poetry and philosophy are never far apart, and the truly great poet does not merely depict, he also interprets life for it by simplifying its problems, by giving its seemingly diverse and contradictory elements their proper place in a larger and fuller pattern of existence. Like all other works of art, the plays of Shakespeare reveal an attitude to life rather than a properly worked out system of philosophy. It is possible, however, to trace certain beliefs in the great mass of incident and character which the plays depict. They are perhaps the beliefs of the Elizabethan age. The center of this was the belief in a past divinely ordered universe, an order reflected in the political life and the state and in the body and soul of each individual. This was the ideal pattern of existence, but Shakespeare, in his analysis of life, saw not only the Renaissance ideal, but also man as he was in actual fact. It was with the nature of man that he was primarily concerned, and his poetic commentary on it began to make definite form in the plays of his middle period, achieving its full expression in Hamlet. The ideal man and the man at the mercy of himself and of a conscience are most closely portrayed. Number 6. Impressive impartiality. Of the general characteristics of Shakespeare's work, apart from its sheer power, none has attracted more attention than its apparent impersonality and the impressive impartiality with which it presents utterly unlike types of character and the most diverse modes of thought and feeling. With not one of his crowd of characters does Shakespeare ever seem to directly to identify himself. He has intellectual sympathy, unlike the Hamlet and Malvolio, Iago and Imogen. Both so complete is the detachment of his characters from his own personality that we can never be quite certain how he felt towards any of them. No great writer reveals so little of himself in his feelings, in his writings. Our knowledge of the mere extents of his life is considerable, but for his mental life, his opinions, his temperament and moral outlook, we must them consider the plays and poems, and if we persist in demanding details of them, we shall either get baffled or led by our own eagerness into the paths of mere conjecture. There is not a character in the plays which we can reasonably regard as representing Shakespeare. There is not a mood or not passion or a situation where we can know that he himself lived through. There is hardly an opinion which we can know was his. Others abide our question. Wrote Arnold of himself, though thou art free. But the phrase, like much else written in this subject, is poetically exaggerated. It is true that we cannot make out from the plays that Shakespeare's religion was exactly, or whether or not he held definite political opinions. Much is certainly hidden from us, but if we study the plays attentively, we ought not to fail to discover in them the main facts concerning Shakespeare's outlook and of life in particular. It is like much else written on this subject is poetically exaggerated. It is true that we cannot make out from the plays what Shakespeare's religion exactly was, or whether or not he held definite political opinions. Much is certainly hidden from us, but if we study the plays attentively, we ought not to fail to discover in them the main lacks of much is certainly hidden to us, but if we study the plays attentively, we ought not to fail to discover in them the main facts concerning Shakespeare's outlook on life and something at least of the principles of Shakespearean art. Of the experience of the plays involve a certain outlook and arise from certain modes of thought and certain preferences, moral or aesthetic. Landor's mighty and beauteous angel with the hidden face in an exaggerated symbol. The details of the face are indeed hidden, but its type and outlines are not obscured. We have to guard against two things chiefly: a desire to know the unessential, reading or fanciful interpretations and interpretations and baseless theories, and a tendency strong in the English mind to confuse aesthetic and moral values. Shakespeare's plays are about moral life, but not nearly so moral as many of his commentators think. It seems certain that he would not have written dramas as illustrations of truisms of the sort to take the about moral life, but not nearly so moral as many as of his commentators think. It seems certain that he would not have written the dramas as illustrations of truisms, or with the sort of wisdom to be found in children's copybooks. To take the pilot of one of his to take the plot of one of his tragedies and realize it into some sort of ethical proposition. It is a process which proves nothing but determines towards the ethical varieties on the part of the commentator. No actual story, with its complex causation of its cleaner ethical views of the part of the commentator. No actual story, with its complex causation and its element of chance, can ever even illustrate an ethical generalization expressive of a mere tendency. Murder will out is simply an untrue saying unless we decide as the murder will out is simply an untrue saying unless we understand it as masa as murder tends to come out when it at once assumes the aspect of truism. Whatever the writer supposed, Arden of Feversham illustrates this tendency in a merely incidental manner, and could not do more. End of page number 60.